Hey, it's Kofi, and I'm back to talk to you a little bit about autism and limerence. I'm a little overstimulated right now, so I'm just kind of cozy right now in some comfortable clothing like this sweater. I really like this sweater. I think I took this one from my mom, and she let me have it because it's just so comfortable, and I need access to comfortable clothing because when I get overstimulated, I need to be able to put those on, or to prevent overstimulation, I need to put those on. So, autism and limerence. Limerence is a word used to describe an experience of infatuation. It can feel a lot like love, but it's more obsessive. It creates feelings similar to what occurs when someone is falling in love. I think that a lot of us get attached to the feeling of dopamine that we get from thinking about that person or looking at that person. My understanding is that limerence is not love, however. It explains why a lot of neurodivergent women may be more susceptible to experiencing limerence. I've been researching this because it's something that's being talked about more often pertaining to autism, especially autistic women. I don't know why that is yet, but people have been having more conversations about it because it's something that a lot of us experience, and I've experienced it before. I think that others have experienced it as well in the same form that I have, which is, it usually looks like this. It looks like you have a crush on someone and it becomes kind of all you can think about. It's like you and this person exist in a fantasy world where you think about being with them, and that rumination and those obsessive thoughts, they just occur over and over and over again, and it's nearly impossible to stop. It can feel like something that just pops in your head all the time. Neurodivergent women in general do tend to struggle with limerence. If you have autism, if you have ADHD, if you have BPD, which is borderline personality disorder. BPD is borderline personality disorder, but bipolar disorder, those with bipolar disorder can struggle with it as well. We, as autistic women, however, may not have the same intuitive sense of appropriate behavior. And so, appropriate behavior as defined by society, but also whether or not the person is treating you with respect and compassion and all of the things that a good partner should do, right? So we may not have the same intuitive sense of appropriate behavior because we don't necessarily come with the understanding that so many other neurotypical women do. It's kind of hard to describe. When I think about it, it's as if, you know how when you get a new phone, it comes with all of the factory settings, so it kind of already, as a default, knows what to do with different programs and blah, blah, blah. We're kind of like a phone that did not come with the factory settings. We're like, why do you do that? How does that make sense in our society? Why did you necessarily, why do all these people necessarily believe one thing about relationships? Is a question you may ask yourself as an autistic person. It's just, I think that's the only way I could describe it. It's also as though we are feral in comparison with our society. When I say feral, I mean someone who was raised out in the woods. The instincts they may have are just purely for survival, and they're very reactive. So I think that a lot of autistic people don't come with those factory settings or come as though they were raised by the same other people in the same way that they think. We tend to think on our own and not necessarily comply with what we were taught all the time or what society wants us to think. And that's a big struggle socially. I think a lot of autistic people struggle socially because of that. But anyway, I think that when you're dating someone and if you think that you have an infatuation, let's say you are in limerence or you're trying to figure out if it's love, I think that to make sure if you're seeing someone at all, you should get a second opinion and then a third opinion at the very least. When you are seeing someone and you're an autistic person and this person, whether or not they're autistic, I find it very helpful to talk to my neurotypical friends or any other friends without autism and say, does this sound odd? Like, this person said this, or they treated me like this. Is that correct? Is that the way that you should be treated by a partner? That is very valuable to know. So make sure that you're not isolated when dating someone. It's good to get other people to bounce ideas off of. We often fail to recognize bad treatment, and we have higher rates of sexual abuse and trauma, which makes us more susceptible to manipulation. A lot of us have had sexual abuse. I've met many autistic women who have sexual abuse. I would even say most have a situation like that, and I think it's because I think that some people often approach us as though we were prey. I think we're probably very good prey for anyone who wants to be sexually predatory towards us. I think that this could also make us very good at recognizing bad behavior, though, if you've had that experience before, because you remember that. It's something you remember for a very long time, and we are very good at recognizing behavioral patterns in people. So I think that is a strength we could use to prevent any other situations like that. I think that a lot of people don't realize how sexual abuse affects a lot of autistic women, because I think in a way people tend to, first of all, they infantilize us, and that goes to the general underlying obsession with pedophilia that I think a lot of the male community has. Sorry. I think that a lot of men like to put young women on a pedestal, and we think of them as sexual beings or just a body, something to be attracted to and not really a person. And then once you're over a certain age, they're like, oh, you don't matter at all. I think that that's unfortunately what the patriarchy speaks to, and I think that when men are misogynistic, that's often what they think of young women. And so because we may have mannerisms, or we may like things that people deem childlike, like stuffed animals or whatever our special interest is. Maybe you have a special interest in a game or some other thing that people like to call kid stuff. That's one way that someone could infantilize you and unfortunately find you very sexually attractive because of, which is so gross. But unfortunately it happens. But anyway, we are very excellent at identifying social behavioral patterns, And we can put that to use in identifying when someone is trying to manipulate us or abuse us. That can be a very helpful tool. It can, about limerence, it can happen that a person feels like your special interest. If you don't know what a special interest is, it's basically when an autistic person has kind of like an obsession or a deep, profound interest in one topic. Mine is art. I really like art, and art has been a special interest of mine since the 5th grade, I would have to say, and that's when I started making art myself. I've got my stem toy here. But our special interest is something we think about a lot. It's kind of an obsession on its own. I think that something else that could contribute to it is if you have autism spectrum disorder, it can so happen that you also have borderline personality disorder, BPD. And those two disorders are often comorbid because BPD can arise as a result of trauma, which unfortunately a lot of autistic women have. And within borderline personality disorder, there is something called a favorite person. And a favorite person is sort of an obsession about one specific person. Because a favorite person is someone who holds significance in our lives, great significance, and it's often relied on for emotional support and validation. And that is a lot like how it sounds to be an autistic person in limerence. And maybe we're not calling it the right thing. Maybe it's just that autistic people have a favorite person as well. Maybe autism and borderline personality disorder are similar in that way. But I guess we'll have to research it some more as a society. If you are an autistic person who often ruminates over certain things and maybe you're taking part in maladaptive daydreaming, that can heavily contribute to having an experience with limerence about a certain person. One other contributor is being socially isolated, which many of us are as people with autism. We like to kind of be on our own a lot of times, or we may not have a lot of friends because we don't tend to be as social as the average person. We may be isolated, and isolation is not good if you are dating someone who is not treating you right. Not good at all. It can allow for you to be abused openly without anyone giving a second thought. You should have a friend there, a good friend who will take a second look at how you're being treated and make sure that you're being treated well. Or at least a parent, a good parent. So that type of social isolation can really contribute to our limerence if we are obsessed about a person and we are alone all of the time. So you're alone all the time, you have a crush on someone, and you're going to be looking to feed that social need or whatever you need at that time. Maybe you're not craving social interaction, but maybe you are understimulated mentally when it comes to social situations, and you can start to have limerence when you are socially isolated as an autistic person, which many of us are. It can greatly impact our attachment style and how someone would function in a relationship. I think that this can contribute to limerence. Because when someone is in limerence, they're thinking about this person over and over and over again. And if we're isolated, that will be our main obsession. It's if we don't have a whole lot of other things going on around us, I think that it would be much easier for a person to become one of our obsessions. As well as social rejection. So many of us have experiences concerning social rejection because we are often socially rejected. There's no easy way to say that. We just have different situations where we're hanging out with someone and maybe we say the wrong thing and then they give you like the look like you said the wrong thing, and that causes a feeling of social rejection. Or maybe you were just bullied. Maybe you were outright bullied in school or even in adulthood. There are lots of neurotypical adults who won't like you as an autistic adult, and they don't know why. It's just something about you that upsets them. What else? Emotional regulation through fantasy. Through our fantasy while we're in limerence concerning this person, we are using that fantasy to emotionally regulate ourselves. We often struggle with that, with emotional regulation, and it can impact our relationship to ourselves and to others. It can intensify the experience of limerence, making the emotional highs and lows even more pronounced when they interact with the person who is the object of their fixation. And of course, I couldn't talk about autism and romance and our experiences with the rest of neurotypical society without talking about the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. So the Manic Pixie Dream Girl, it's a stock character type in fiction, usually depicted as a young woman with eccentric personality quirks who serves as the romantic interest for a male protagonist. I'm not exactly sure where this came from, but the Manic Pixie Dream Girl is a stereotype of a woman that probably doesn't really exist, and she's just there for male consumption, and she's cool and she's quirky, quirky is often something that we attribute to autistic traits because of maybe we have like little quirks, or maybe we fidget a lot and someone thinks that's quirky, or maybe we have bright ideas and we go about life in a daze in fantasy and a childlike manner. But the Manic Pixie Dream Girl, it's one-dimensional. These are not real people. This is like a woman who she just wants to let her hair down, and she's not like other girls, and she's something that's just going to be the object of a man's fantasy, not a true person in her own right. So she's beautiful, she's quirky, she's free, and this is something that a lot of people are just attracted to, but once they realize that we are not the person that they've put on the shelf, on a pedestal, and worshipped and admired like some kind of trophy girl, it may become upsetting to them. So once that fantasy is quashed and they realize we're actual people, sometimes that's a problem. We have our own thoughts and emotions and triggers and likes and dislikes. And even if it looks fun and quirky to you, and even if you think we're pretty, we can still be autistic and struggle with our autistic traits against society. So that was a little bit about autism and limerence and the way that we experience it. I hope that was helpful. I have experienced limerence myself, but not in a while, and if you have an experience with limerence, or you believe you do, let me know in the comment section. I would love to hear your stories, and maybe we could exchange ideas about what happened or what's going on. And I think that if you were to take one thing away from this video, do remember that infatuation is real, likely unhealthy, and something that autistic women are prone to. And if you're going to date someone, get other opinions about this person and the way that they treat you. Have someone there. Don't become so focused on the relationship that you become isolated and are therefore prone to abuse. So, thank you for listening. Bye-bye.